his secretary sent me a bikini selfie with the caption, "He likes red." He laughed it off, saying it was nothing. "He's always had a thing for redheads," he smirked. I smiled, invited her to dinner, and served them both a taste of what happens when he underestimates me. It was a Thursday afternoon when the message arrived. From an unknown number. Just an image. The notification pinged while I was preparing dinner. Jason's favorite pasta primavera. My hands were covered in flour from the homemade dough I was rolling out, a skill I'd perfected over our 7 years of marriage. I wiped my hands on my apron and reached for my phone, expecting a delivery confirmation for the anniversary gift I'd ordered. Instead, there she was. Julia, his secretary, posing poolside in a red bikini captioned, "He likes red." I stared at it for exactly 5 seconds. Not out of shock, but because I had expected something like this. The image burned into my retinas, her copper hair cascading over tan shoulders, that calculated smile, the bikini that matched the shade of lipstick she wore to the office Christmas party, the one where Jason had disappeared for 20 minutes. My kitchen suddenly felt too warm. The pasta machine gleamed accusingly under the pendant lights we'd picked together during our kitchen renovation last spring. I set my phone face down on the marble countertop, the screen still illuminated with her image. Jason had become increasingly distant. Late work nights, fewer shared dinners, constant screen time. The signs had been accumulating like dust in forgotten corners. Last month he'd missed our standing Thursday date night for the 3rd time, claiming budget meetings ran late. I'd called his office at 9 p.m. and no one answered. When he finally came home that night, his collar smelled of unfamiliar perfume, something floral and aggressive. Not the subtle scent I'd worn for years because he once mentioned he liked it. I finished the pasta anyway, mechanically forming perfect ribbons. I heard his key in the door at 6:30, surprisingly punctual. His footsteps hesitated in the hallway, followed by the rustle of his suit jacket being hung in the closet. I slid my phone into my pocket just as he entered. "Something smells amazing," he said, loosening his tie, the blue one I'd given him for his promotion. He kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture that barely grazed my skin. We ate dinner with the evening news humming in the background. I waited until he'd finished his second glass of wine before sliding my phone across the table, the image still displayed. "This came today," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "From an unknown number." Jason's eyes widened momentarily before he composed himself. He picked up the phone, his expression shifting from surprise to practiced nonchalance. When I showed him the picture, he laughed. "She's just being playful. You know how she is." Then the smirk. "I've always had a thing for redheads." The statement hung between us like a visible thread, one I could follow back through our entire relationship, connecting moments I'd previously dismissed. Julia wasn't the first. There had been Amber from accounting 3 years ago, whose auburn hair had caught his attention at company functions. Before her, Chelsea, the yoga instructor whose strawberry blonde curls bounced as she demonstrated poses. I'd been too trusting, too willing to believe his explanations. I didn't argue. I just smiled, tucked it away, and began observing more closely. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his even breathing. The moonlight filtered through our bedroom blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the bedspread. I slid out of bed at 2 a.m. and padded to his home office. His laptop sat on the desk, closed but not locked. He'd grown careless, confident in my complacency. Julia was new but not shy. She'd started at the firm just 4 months ago. Fresh out of business school, ambitious and 27, 11 years younger than me. She often texted him outside work hours. I'd seen the names, the emojis. Heart eyes, flames, private jokes I wasn't privy to. I opened his laptop, and his emails appeared without requiring a password. He'd stopped hiding things, assuming I wouldn't look. Scrolling through his calendar, I found lunch meetings with her name attached, blocks of time labeled J Project Discussion, that corresponded to evenings he'd come home late. I wasn't interested in confrontation. I was interested in clarity. The next morning, I suggested we combine our phone plans to save money. He agreed without hesitation. Another mistake. I set up the new account with access to message histories going back 3 months. That night, after he fell asleep, I downloaded everything. So I backed up messages. Noticed gift charges on our shared card. Business dinners labeled vaguely as client entertainment at restaurants I knew were intimate. with secluded booths and dim lighting. A hotel charge from when he claimed to be at a conference in Phoenix. Receipts for jewelry I'd never received. My silence wasn't weakness, it was set up. I created a dedicated email account and forwarded everything there. I installed a discreet tracking app on his phone during breakfast one morning while he showered. I contacted a lawyer friend for preliminary advice, careful to speak in hypotheticals. While Jason believed he'd gotten away with subtle infidelity, I was building a timeline. Each piece of evidence was a stepping stone toward my own liberation. The weight of betrayal transformed into purposeful action. I was done being underestimated. Done being the understanding wife who looked the other way. Done pretending not to notice the lingering glances between them in our own home when she dropped off urgent documents on Sundays. 2 weeks after receiving the bikini photo, I had enough evidence to destroy both their careers. Misappropriation of company funds. Falsified expense reports. Time theft. The affair was just the salacious cherry on top. I decided to host a dinner, one they wouldn't forget. As I sent the invitation to Julia from my personal account, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I opened my closet and pushed aside the neutral colors Jason preferred me in. At the back hung a dress I'd purchased years ago but never worn, crimson, bold, unapologetic. I slipped it on, the silk cool against my skin. In the mirror I barely recognized myself. Not because of the dress but because of the woman wearing it. Someone who had found strength in silence and strategy and patience. Red had never been my color before. But perhaps it was time to claim it. I sent Julia a message from my own number this time. Let's do dinner. Just us girls. No pressure. The text felt oddly liberating. Sending words I'd rehearsed a dozen times while staring at my bathroom mirror. Practicing the casual indifference I needed to convey. 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing, then stopping, then typing again. I imagined her surprise, perhaps consulting with Jason about how to respond. Finally, after 2 minutes that stretched like taffy, her reply came fast. That sounds fun. I've always wanted to get to know you better. The audacity almost made me laugh. I wondered if she practiced that line or if such betrayal came naturally to her. Perhaps she truly believed I was oblivious, the clueless wife too comfortable in domestic routines to notice the signs. Or worse, she thought I knew but accepted my role as the convenient spouse who maintained the home while she provided the excitement. I spent the morning researching restaurants, somewhere neither Jason nor his colleagues would frequent. Somewhere with the right atmosphere for what I had planned. Not too intimate, suggesting friendship. Not too formal, implying confrontation. I reserved a quiet booth at an elegant restaurant downtown called Ophelia's. Private enough for conversation. Public enough for accountability. The maitre d' assured me the booth would be in the back corner. Perfect for catch-ups, he'd said with practiced charm. That afternoon I visited our home printer. The soft mechanical hum as it worked felt like a countdown. I printed a copy of our shared credit card statement. Marked items that didn't align with Jason's claimed activities. A $430 dinner at Lumiere when he told me he was working late with the team on sandwiches. A $290 spa charge on a Saturday he'd supposedly spent golfing. A jewelry store purchase 3 days before Julia's birthday. I highlighted each item in yellow. Added sticky notes with his written explanations, text messages claiming whereabouts. The contrast between evidence and alibi created its own narrative, one even a stranger could follow. I also brought a folder of screenshots. Casual flirtations, inside jokes, hotel confirmations, all with timestamps. I'd been thorough, organizing everything chronologically. The progression told its own story, from professional boundaries to blurred lines to explicit arrangements. One particularly damning exchange discussed my scheduled dentist appointment as perfect timing for them. The manila folder felt surprisingly light for the weight of its contents. I slipped it into a leather portfolio, the one Jason had given me for my promotion 3 years ago, back when he still celebrated my successes instead of competing with them. At home, I stood before my closet, considering my wardrobe choices carefully. The red dress caught my eye again, but tonight wasn't about making statements. Tonight was about being underestimated one final time. The night of dinner, I dressed in muted tones. A gray silk blouse and charcoal pencil skirt that whispered restraint and professionalism. Pearl earrings my mother had given me. A light touch of makeup that highlighted nothing in particular. I wanted to be forgettable, a blank canvas against which her choices would stand in sharp relief. I arrived 15 minutes early, settled into the booth and ordered sparkling water. My hands remained steady as I arranged the portfolio on the seat beside me, angled so it wouldn't be immediately visible. The restaurant hummed with Thursday evening energy. Business dinners, friends catching up, couples on dates. Normal people with normal lives, unaware of the small demolition about to take place in the corner booth. At exactly 7:30 she appeared at the entrance. The maitre d' pointed her in my direction and I watched her approach. She arrived in red, a fitted dress with a neckline that dipped just low enough to be noticed but not commented on. The exact shade of the bikini from the photo, which couldn't be coincidence. Her copper hair fell in waves around her shoulders, catching the dim lighting of the restaurant. Julia hugged me like an old friend, her perfume leaving a cloud between us. "This is so nice of you," she said, her voice honey-warm and practiced. "I was so excited when I got your message." She slid into the booth across from me, arranging herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being watched. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, which darted around as if searching for hidden motives or possibly Jason himself. The server approached and I ordered wine without consulting the list. "The Cabernet Sauvignon," I said. "2 glasses." "Red?" She joked with a theatrical lilt, as if we were already sharing some delightful inside understanding. I smiled. Of course. The word hung between us, an acknowledgement of her caption, her dress, her assumption that she had the upper hand in this choreographed dance. We exchanged pleasantries about the restaurant, the unseasonably warm weather, and upcoming company event. She mentioned Jason twice in the first 5 minutes, casual references designed to establish her proximity to him. I nodded, asked appropriate follow-up questions, and watched her grow increasingly comfortable with her performance. The wine arrived, deep crimson in crystal glasses. We clinked a toast to new friendships, and I took a small sip while she drank more deeply. Once drinks arrived, I slid the folder toward her, maintaining eye contact as I did. "What's this?" she asked, cheerful, her perfectly manicured fingers reaching for it as if expecting a gift or perhaps photographs I wanted to share. "Just everything you've worked for," I replied calmly. The double meaning wasn't lost on me, but her confident smile suggested it was lost on her. Her smile remained frozen in place as she opened the portfolio, but it faltered as she flipped through pages. Her face drained of color, the contrast making her red lipstick appear garish rather than glamorous. She swallowed hard, her throat working visibly. "This isn't what it looks like," she muttered, her voice suddenly small in the intimate space between us. "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I said. "And now it's documented." She closed the folder quickly as if containing a fire. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, perhaps checking if anyone had noticed her reaction. The performance had shattered, leaving raw uncertainty in its place. "I don't understand why you're showing me this," she whispered, her composed facade cracking like thin ice. I took another small sip of wine, letting the moment stretch between us. The power had shifted, I could feel it in the air, see it in the slight tremor of her hands as she pushed the folder back toward me. "I thought it was important that we understand each other," I said finally, "before we discuss next steps." I let her sit with the discomfort, flipping page by page, until she reached the dinner receipt labeled Client Entertainment. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together as recognition dawned. A $347 meal at Unravel, a restaurant known for its intimate atmosphere and extensive wine list. A place where Jason had taken me for our 5th anniversary. "You used the company card," I said. "That makes this more than personal. It makes it professional misconduct." The legal implications seemed to hit her harder than the personal ones. Her shoulders tensed beneath the red fabric of her dress. The confidence that had carried her into the restaurant evaporated like morning dew under harsh sunlight. She blinked fast, mascara clumping slightly at the corners. "I didn't know," Jason said. "Jason said a lot," I interrupted, my voice level and controlled. "And now it's your turn to listen." I took a small notebook from my purse, leather-bound, monogrammed, a gift from my father when I graduated law school. I hadn't practiced in years, choosing instead to support Jason's career while I worked in corporate compliance. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I've spoken with legal counsel," I said, opening the notebook to a page with bullet points. "Here are your options. The restaurant's ambient noise provided perfect cover. Just loud enough that anyone passing wouldn't catch our conversation, just quiet enough that she could hear every carefully chosen word. I laid out the options. Submit a resignation, sign a statement acknowledging misconduct and leave quietly. You have until Monday morning, I added, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. This contains the statement. You'll notice it doesn't mention the affair, only the financial improprieties. Her fingers trembled as she took the envelope, nails scraping against the thick paper. The red polish matched her dress, matched the wine still untouched in her glass. If you don't, I forward this to HR and legal. Along with the expense reports. The folder remained open between us, displaying a hotel receipt from the peninsula. A weekend when Jason had claimed to be at a regional management retreat. The date circled in yellow highlighter seemed to pulse on the page. They'll fire both of you, I continued. And given the company's ethics clause, there will be no severance. Her red lipstick was now smeared, her voice barely above a whisper. The perfect image she'd cultivated was dissolving around her, like a painting left in rain. You wouldn't. She started, but the words lacked conviction. Her eyes darted to the evidence before her, then back to my face, searching for any sign of bluff or hesitation. I would. And I will. Unless you choose the easier exit. She took a shaky breath. I could tell Jason. Warn him. I smiled slightly. You could. But then the full dossier goes to the board tomorrow morning instead of just HR. That includes the texts where you both discussed how to hide the expenses. I turned to a specific page in the folder. This one, where you suggested using the Sydney project as cover for the weekend getaway, is particularly problematic given the budget allocations. Her carefully constructed defenses crumbled. The manipulation, the secret smiles, the confident ownership of my husband's attention, all of it replaced by the stark reality of professional consequences. She nodded slowly, a tear tracking through her foundation. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I sipped my wine, allowing the rich flavor to fill my mouth before swallowing. Intent doesn't erase consequence. The rest of our dinner passed in near silence. She barely touched her entree when it arrived, pushing salmon around her plate while avoiding my eyes. I ate methodically, tasting nothing but the satisfaction of control reclaimed. When the check came, I paid with my personal card. A final legitimate business expense, I remarked. She flinched. Before leaving, she paused. What about Jason? That's between my husband and me, I replied, emphasizing the word husband ever so slightly. I watched her walk away, shoulders hunched, the confident stride gone. The red dress that had been meant as a statement now seemed like a beacon of vulnerability, drawing eyes to her hasty retreat. After she left, I ordered another glass of wine. The server noticed my dining companions barely touched food. Was everything all right with her meal? She lost her appetite, I replied. Life surprises us sometimes. I sat alone in the booth, feeling neither triumph nor despair, only the quiet certainty of necessary action. On my phone, I composed a message to Jason. Hope you're hungry. We'll talk at dinner. The drive home felt longer than usual, streetlights casting intermittent shadows across the dashboard. I caught glimpses of my reflection in the rearview mirror, a woman I was just beginning to recognize again. At home, I changed into comfortable clothes and began preparing a meal. I cooked his favorite, pasta carbonara, the dish I'd made the night we got engaged. Something comforting, familiar. The final courtesy before demolition. I heard his key in the lock at 8:45. Later than usual, but earlier than his recent pattern. Perhaps Julia had already called him, voice trembling with warnings and accusations. Perhaps not. He entered the kitchen cautiously, senses alert like prey detecting a predator's presence. Something smells amazing, he offered, the words hollow echoes of our normal routine. Just finished, I replied, sliding a plate toward him. Would you open wine? The Burlo would pair well. He moved to the wine cabinet, selecting the bottle I'd suggested, a gift from his boss last Christmas. As he poured wine into crystal glasses, wedding gifts from his parents, I reached for my own portfolio. Identical to the one I'd shown Julia, but with additional documents. As he poured wine, I handed him his copy of the folder. The weight of it surprised him. He nearly spilled the deep red liquid onto our counter. He froze, recognition immediate. Where did you get this? From our home, I said. Where you left everything. His face performed a complex dance of emotions. Surprise, fear, calculation, and finally, a practiced contrition I'd seen before. When he'd missed anniversaries, forgotten commitments, prioritized everything above our marriage. Let's sit, I suggested, gesturing toward the dining table I'd set with our everyday dishes. Your food will get cold. Jason tried to recover. His fork hovered above the untouched pasta as he shifted strategies. I'd seen this expression before. When negotiating with clients, when convincing his boss to increase his department's budget. The practiced sincerity that had won him awards and promotions. It didn't mean anything. You know I love you. The words fell between us like stones into still water. 7 years of marriage reduced to the most predictable line in the script of infidelity. I wondered how many women before me had heard those exact words, arranged in that exact order, delivered with that exact earnest gaze. I said nothing, just handed him Julia's signed resignation and written statement. She'd texted me earlier, a photograph of the signed documents. Her handwriting had been shaky but legible, the confession of a woman who understood she'd gambled and lost. He scanned the pages, disbelief washing over his features. This is from today? You've already spoken to her. We had dinner at Ophelia's. She wore red. His eyes narrowed, darting from the documents to my face. The calculation behind them was almost audible. Assessing damage, searching for leverage, weighing options. You set us up, he accused, voice rising with indignation that sounded almost genuine. No. I invited her to dinner. I took a bite of pasta, chewing slowly. The carbonara was perfect. Creamy, rich, comforting. I wanted to remember this meal, this moment of reclaimed power. She made her choices. So did you. His anger deflated, replaced by something more pragmatic. He'd always been practical, even in crisis. It was what made him successful in business, and apparently in conducting an affair under his wife's nose. He realized what had happened. The pieces assembled in his mind, revealing the chess game I'd been playing while he thought we were still at checkers. So what now? The question hung between us. This was the moment I'd rehearsed in my mind for weeks. Not with anger or tears or accusations, but with clarity and precision. You'll sleep in the guest room. And we'll begin separating accounts. The finality in my voice surprised even me. Something tensed in his jaw, a flicker of the man I'd once believed him to be, fighting to preserve what he suddenly realized was valuable only now that it was slipping away. Is this it? He asked. His voice had softened, vulnerability seeping through the cracks of his composure. I considered the question. Was it 7 years of building a life together? Vacations in coastal towns, Sunday mornings with coffee and crosswords, plans for children we'd never quite gotten around to having. The countless small moments that had threaded together to form our shared existence. This is the shift, I answered. The end is up to you. He didn't touch his food again that night. I heard him in the guest bedroom pacing, making phone calls in hushed tones. Probably to his brother, maybe to a lawyer. I slept deeply for the first time in months. Over the next few weeks, I moved with methodical purpose. I separated our finances, updated my legal documents, and scheduled appointments with a divorce attorney. Not out of spite but out of necessity, creating clear boundaries where trust had collapsed. One Tuesday morning, I requested a meeting with Marissa Levine, the company's chief operations officer. We'd worked together on several projects and she'd always respected my attention to detail. Over the next few weeks, I met with HR myself. The meeting lasted exactly 45 minutes. I presented the evidence clinically without emotional commentary. The financial improprieties were the focus. Company funds misused for personal indulgences. The affair was merely contextual. I laid out Jason's misconduct and Julia's resignation, my voice steady as I highlighted specific expenses and dates. Marissa's expression remained professional, but I caught the moment of realization when she connected certain absences with specific reports that had been delayed. You've been very thorough, she noted, closing the folder. And discreet. I value the company's reputation, I replied. And my own. The company launched a quiet inquiry, ultimately resulting in Jason's demotion. He was removed from the executive track and reassigned to a regional management position. Still respectable, but without the influence or visibility he'd cultivated so carefully. In a development that surprised everyone except Marissa, I secured a promotion to lead a procurement division, a role I'd quietly supported for years behind the scenes. My background in compliance made me the logical choice for restructuring a department that had operated too long without proper oversight. When the announcement went out, Jason sent me a text. "Congratulations. Was this your plan all along?" I didn't respond. There had been no master plan, only the natural consequence of removing obstacles and allowing my competence to be seen clearly. In our home, we developed a careful choreography of avoidance. Jason collected his belongings gradually, moving most to the guest room, some to a storage unit he thought I didn't know about. We communicated through notes left on the kitchen counter, texts about practical matters, emails copied to our respective attorneys. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. Those were weapons of the insecure, and I had moved beyond the need for emotional warfare. I just documented, presented, and moved forward. The divorce proceedings progressed with the same methodical care I'd applied to uncovering the affair. Our mediation sessions were models of civility that left our lawyers almost disappointed. Jason stayed on at the company, but his reputation never recovered. The whispers followed him through hallways into meetings across the cafeteria. Not because I had spread rumors, I never discussed what had happened, but because absence of explanation creates its own narrative. Around the office, eyes no longer followed him, they followed me. Not with pity or curiosity, but with a new respect. I had transformed from Jason's wife who works in compliance to Elizabeth, the procurement director who restructured vendor relationships and saved the company millions. 6 months after that dinner at Ophelia's, I passed Jason in the hallway. He'd lost weight, his suits hanging slightly loose at the shoulders. He nodded politely, professional courtesy intact. "You look well," he said, an observation rather than a compliment. "I am well," I replied. And for the first time in years, it wasn't a performance. At the next corporate event, I wore red, not out of irony but power. The annual leadership summit gathered executives from all regional offices, a showcase of achievement and strategic vision. My dress was simple but impeccable, crimson silk that fell just below the knee, with a neckline that suggested confidence rather than attention-seeking. The color that once belonged to Julia now belonged to me, reclaimed like everything else she had borrowed. The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel buzzed with conversation and calculated networking. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with white orchids and silver candelabras. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and surveyed the room, noting the subtle shifts in dynamics since last year's event. Jason arrived alone. Julia had vanished from everyone's contacts. Her LinkedIn profile now listed a position with a smaller firm in Denver. The whispers about her departure had faded into corporate mythology, the kind of cautionary tale shared during happy hours but never in official settings. Marissa approached, elegant in charcoal gray. "Your presentation materials are loaded and ready," she said. "We've adjusted the schedule to give you 20 minutes instead of 15. The board members specifically requested more detail on the compliance framework." I nodded, touching the small portfolio containing my speaking notes. "I appreciate the additional time." The agenda had been arranged to position my presentation as the centerpiece of the morning session. A year ago, I would have been seated at a side table, introduced as Jason Mitchell's wife who works in compliance. Tonight, Jason was the footnote, present but peripheral. At precisely 10:15, I took the podium. The room quieted, attention focusing forward. I surveyed the faces. Some curious, some impressed, some still evaluating my worth in this new position. At the back, near a decorative column, stood Jason, drink in hand, expression carefully neutral. I gave a presentation on ethical leadership and corporate integrity. My voice carried confidently through the room as I outlined the new procurement protocols that had already saved the company $4.3 million in the first quarter. I discussed transparency in expense reporting, the implementation of tiered approval systems, and the ethical framework guiding vendor relationships. Integrity isn't just about following rules, I concluded, my gaze sweeping across the room, pausing fractionally on Jason. It's about creating systems where doing the right thing is the easiest path forward. There were no fireworks. Just applause and nods. No dramatic confrontations or public reckonings. Just the quiet assertion of competence and the subtle realignment of influence. As attendees moved toward breakout sessions, I collected congratulations with gracious smiles. The CEO touched my elbow briefly. Your procurement overhaul is exactly what we needed. The board is impressed. Jason lingered by the bar watching. He knew. The expensive scotch in his hand, his third of the evening, betrayed the casual pose he attempted to maintain. When our eyes met across the room, he raised his glass slightly, not quite a toast, more an acknowledgement of a game well played. I didn't approach him. We had said all that needed saying through lawyers and mediators. The following Tuesday my lawyer called. The judge signed off this morning, she said. It's official. My lawyer finalized the divorce agreement with a fair settlement, prenup intact. The document arrived via courier that afternoon in a heavy manila envelope. I signed for it during a lunch break, between meetings with the Asian market expansion team and a vendor contract renewal. The end of our marriage was marked by signatures on dotted lines, not tearful goodbyes or bitter arguments. The prenuptial agreement I'd insisted upon, against Jason's protests that it showed lack of faith, had protected my inheritance and the investments I'd made before our marriage. Jason kept his company shares and the vacation property in Maine. I retained the city apartment and my family's lake house. I didn't destroy Jason. I simply revealed him. His career continued, though the trajectory had been irrevocably altered. Last month he'd been passed over for the regional director position he'd been positioning himself for over the past 2 years. Not because I had intervened, but because his judgment had been called into question. I didn't need revenge to be loud. I needed it to be lasting. The quiet dignity with which I'd handled everything, from discovery to divorce, had earned me respect that shouting never could. The systems I'd implemented at work would long outlast any satisfaction screaming might have provided. Julia never contacted me again. She changed jobs, reportedly moved cities. According to common connections on professional networks, she had reinvented herself in corporate training, specializing in communication strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't chase. I didn't care. Her part in my story had been incidental, a catalyst rather than a central character. Whatever life she built now existed entirely separate from mine, relevant only as a distant echo of a transformation I'd undergone. In my newly reorganized home office, I methodically updated files and documents. I updated my life one file at a time. Finances, passwords, power of attorney. My emergency contacts no longer included Jason's name. My beneficiaries were changed to my sister's children and selected charities. My living will now designated my brother as medical proxy. With each amended document and revised designation I felt lighter. These weren't just administrative tasks. They were declarations of independence, affirmations that my life continued on paths of my own choosing. And with each step I gained more than I lost. What had appeared as catastrophic betrayal had transformed into unexpected liberation. The carefully constructed facade of a perfect marriage had hidden the truth that I had been playing a supporting role in my own life. One evening, as I prepared for a business trip to Singapore, my first international assignment leading the procurement team's global standardization project, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your promotion announcement. Congratulations. You always were the smarter one. J. I read it once, then deleted it without replying. The validation I might once have craved from him now seemed irrelevant. A postscript rather than a conclusion. In my suitcase, carefully packed between silk blouses and tailored slacks, lay a new dress. Red, of course. Not because it reminded me of him or her or what had happened, but because it reminded me of myself. The woman who had finally stepped fully into her power. Some would call it poetic justice. I simply called it living. Today red is still my color, but not for seduction, for strength. The Singapore trip marked the beginning of my global role, one that took me through Tokyo, London, Berlin, and eventually to our new headquarters in Chicago. In each city I added to my collection. A scarlet cashmere scarf from a small shop in Kensington, ruby earrings from an artisan in Kyoto, a crimson leather portfolio from a craftsman in Milan. Small tokens that carried the weight of reclamation. 3 years have passed since that dinner at Ophelia's. 3 years of building, refining, and expanding my vision, both professionally and personally. The promotion to Vice President of Global Operations came last quarter, announced with little fanfare but significant impact. My team spans 7 countries and 3 continents. My decisions affect thousands. My home is quiet, My office decorated in clean, intentional lines. The apartment I kept in the divorce has been transformed, every trace of Jason's presence methodically replaced. Gone are the hunting prints he insisted complemented the living room. In their place hang abstract canvases in shades of blue and copper. The oversized leather furniture that dominated the space has been exchanged for sleek, modern pieces that better suit my taste. My office features a single wall of deep red, not an accident or an obsession but a reminder. Visitors comment on its boldness. They don't know its history. This morning I stood before the bathroom mirror, applying lipstick before a board presentation. I see myself in the mirror and no longer flinch at what I tolerated. The woman reflected back has sharper edges, clearer eyes, a more certain set to her jaw. She recognizes her worth without external validation. She knows the difference between compromise and surrender. Last week I received an email from Jason, his first direct communication in over a year. He's engaged to someone new, a marketing executive from the Dallas office. He wanted to tell me himself, out of respect. I replied with a single line, "I wish you both well." And I meant it. His choices no longer have the power to wound me. My story isn't about betrayal, it's about redefinition. The narrative I once believed, of being the supportive wife whose identity existed primarily in relation to her husband's success, has been rewritten. The betrayal was merely the plot twist that revealed a more compelling protagonist had been waiting in the wings all along. I didn't lose a husband. I lost the illusion of one. The partner I believed Jason to be had never truly existed, or perhaps had existed briefly before ambition and opportunity eroded his principles. The marriage I mourned was a construction built on selective perception and willful ignorance of warning signs. And in doing so I gained peace, control and presence. The freedom to make decisions without consideration of his preferences. The ability to travel without checking someone else's schedule. The luxury of decorating without compromise. The simple joy of eating whatever I want for dinner, watching whatever film catches my interest, sleeping diagonally across the bed if I choose. Dating has been an exercise in recalibration. I've had dinner with interesting men. A literature professor whose observations about Greek tragedy made me laugh. A widowed architect whose quiet understanding of space extended to emotional boundaries as well. None have moved beyond pleasant evenings and respectful goodbyes. I'm not closed to possibility, but neither am I searching to fill a vacancy that doesn't exist. I still pass couples in restaurants. Sometimes I catch a glance or an awkward smile. Occasionally I recognize the look. A woman watching her partner's attention drift, making excuses for absences, choosing silence over confrontation. I see the moment of recognition in her eyes when our gazes meet. The flash of awareness that she's being handed a map but isn't ready to follow it. I hope she's watching. Not me specifically but the signs surrounding her. The password changes, the unexplained expenses, the conversations that end abruptly when she enters a room. I hope she's collecting evidence, not just of potential infidelity, but of her own worth beyond the relationship. I hope she doesn't wait too long to stand up. Not necessarily to leave but to establish boundaries, to require respect, to expect honesty. To understand that accommodation without reciprocity isn't partnership, it's erasure. And if she does, I hope she wears red too. Not literally perhaps but figuratively, I hope she chooses visibility over invisibility. Assertion over acquiescence, action over acceptance. I hope she finds the shade that represents her reclaimed power, whatever color that might be. Because there's power in being underestimated. And greater power in the comeback. The quieter the transformation, the more profound its impact. My colleagues who dismissed me as Jason's wife, now report to me. The executives who barely acknowledged my presence now seek my approval. Last month, at an industry conference, I delivered the keynote address on integrating ethical practices into global supply chains. Afterward, during the reception, I noticed a young woman approaching, early 30s, sharp suit, determined expression. "Your presentation was incredible," she said, extending her hand. "But I really wanted to thank you for something else." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. 3 years ago, I worked in accounting at the regional office. I saw how you handled everything with. She hesitated. With such precision and dignity. It showed me what professionalism truly means. I wasn't just the wife. I was the wake-up call. Not just for Jason and Julia but for those watching from the periphery. the junior staff, the administrative assistants, the colleagues who witnessed how strength can manifest in calm calculation rather than emotional outbursts. And when they laughed, I simply waited. When Jason joked about Julia's playful message, when Julia hugged me with false friendship, when they believed their clever duplicity would continue unchecked, I didn't rush to reaction. I didn't give them the satisfaction of my distress. I observed, documented, and planned. Until it was my turn to serve the main course. The meal that changed everything. A carefully prepared dish of consequences, presented with elegant restraint. Now, as I prepare for another day of leading rather than following, I catch a final glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. The red blazer I've chosen for today's board meeting isn't a statement or a reminder. It's simply a color that suits me. One among many I might have selected. Red was never her color anyway. It was always mine. I just needed the right moment to claim it. If this story of sweet revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when she confronted Julia at the restaurant with that folder of evidence and watched the color drain from her face. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.